I know we're not supposed to use notes, but you know, I feel more powerful having my notes, so isn't this what this is all about? So,
we own it!
I had an abortion, and now I provide abortions. I think I know the day I became pregnant, and it makes me wonder if this is a common experience, knowing the day you became pregnant. My boyfriend and I were in Mexico visiting his family, and we were staying in his childhood room. And like any good Catholic mother, she had set us up 2 separate rooms. But usually at the end of the day, reality wins in those situations. It's interesting that I really remember this specific sexual encounter. It was not raucous or out of the ordinary or anything like that, but it really has always stuck with me. So after we had sex, we were getting dressed, and I was straightening my very, very long hair in the mirror. Most of you know me, I've always had pretty short hair. It was really funny. His mom had busted into the room with a giant plate of mango and papaya, and I feel like she busted in with this conviction that she knew exactly what we were doing. She looked at us both, set the plate of fruit on the bed, and then just walked out. And I laughed with my boyfriend. I was like, she totally knew we were just having sex. And we just laughed and moved on. So at the time, I was taking oral birth control. And I feel like I should use quotes when I say taking. I'd often go a few days, forget a pill, double up, triple up on pills, double up, triple up on my praying. Please, God, universe, whatever, let me get my period. I promise next time I'm using condoms. I promise next time I'm going to be better. I'm going to take my pills like I should. I promise. But sorry, universe, I was 18. I was 18 and just about to fail out of college. I was working a combination of jobs, waitressing, setting up jumping castles in parking lots, intermittently in fast food, hotel gift shops, literally whatever you can think of, because I was paying for college. I eventually did fail out of college and started lying to my parents that college was great. They were so proud of me since I was the first person in my family ever to have gone to college. So of course I got pregnant then because life was hectic and thrown to the mix that I had to wait for my monthly birth control at Planned Parenthood because that's what you had to do for discounted birth control, wait. So my period was late and I thought, I'm gonna buy a pregnancy test, which is interesting that I would even know it's late because I am the worst at knowing when even to this day, knowing when it's like I'm a 15-year-old every time, just bleeding all over everything. So I don't know. I bought a pregnancy test, and I remember I took it. I was in my bathroom, took it, and there was a faint positive line. And I remember being like, amen, I got out. I was like, because on the box, the positive line is so distinct. It's such a distinct yes, like black, white, yes, no, like, and I was like, oh, fuck yes, it is not a distinct line. So kind of just moved on. And I remember just sharing this experience with one of my older friends at the time. And she was like, oh no, like, any positive line is a positive line. And I was like, no. And she was like, yeah. So, diligent folk, we went to Walgreens and bought like a whole slew of other ones, took them all a variety of positives. And it's interesting, I really don't remember kind of my thought at that time, but I remember thinking like, the makers of these should make it more clear that like a faint line is a positive line, so that should be more clear. So my older friend, she was married, and she's like, we have to get these pregnancy tests out of here because my husband is going to lose his shit if he thinks that I'm pregnant. So we gathered them all, and like we couldn't figure out where to go, and I was working at Jack in the Box at the time, so I was like, let's just go throw them at the dump behind Jack in the Box. So that's where we went. So Let's see where I'm at on here. Jack in the Box. Yep. Okay, so I was 8 weeks pregnant, and first trimester abortions in Arizona cost $300. And as you can imagine, I did not have access to $300. But my boyfriend at the time, like still one of my best friends to this day, was a baller online poker player. Like, he was so good. And he's like, oh, no big deal. And this was before they changed the online poker laws, so you could make just tons of money. I remember he would buy like his brother like watches because you like had to spend it in a certain amount of time. It was crazy. So no big deal. He, made the money, and we scheduled the abortion. And I don't really remember much about the actual abortion. Sort of within the common theme of white man doctor. I really had very little interaction with this white man doctor, but power to him. But what I do remember most about my experience is how quote unquote nice this abortion clinic was. It was in a good neighborhood, lots of trees, dimly lit, very comfortable, new magazines, and I was very impressed with how quote unquote nice this clinic was. And actually, even in the room, it was like a very deeply painted purple wall, and it was like a cush exam room, like table, chair, recliner thing. It was great. I got Valium, and it was I was out. So I don't remember much about the actual procedure, just how like comforting and nice I felt in there. So the nurse walked me out, brought me to my boyfriend, and we drove back to the house we were living at. And I remember waking up to a foot-long Subway sandwich and like being so happy, and just went back to sleep for kind of the rest of the day. And I kept sleeping and felt totally normal like right after I woke up. And so I never regretted this decision. It never felt like a wrong decision, and I wouldn't have done anything differently. In fact, it was one of the most sure decisions I've ever made in my life. So fast forward 8 years later, I get accepted into medical school. I know, it was wild. So I get accepted into medical school. I get accepted at the University of Kansas. Yeah. It only takes one. So I moved to Wichita, Kansas, and I am from Tucson, Arizona. Like not San Francisco or anything. So like a similar red vibe state. But really, Wichita is like Arizona on steroids. Dr. George Tiller was shot in church in 2009 in Wichita, Kansas, and he was one of a pretty famous abortion provider who is now famous for being shot. And that is the kind of level of hate that is in Wichita, Kansas. So in 2014, the clinic reopened, and I kind of quickly switched from passively pro-choice to actively pro-choice, because in the face of such adversity, you have to act. And in 2014, I was supervised doing one of my first abortions, and had done them for a year and a half, pretty much every other week since then, when I lived in Kansas. It is interesting because no local provider actually no local provider actually provided abortions in Wichita, Kansas. All the providers flew in there because all the physicians were scared for their safety and lives. And I want to point out too that the patients in Wichita, Kansas did not get the comforting spa-like experience that I had. And because the laws that were passed in Kansas, rooms that abortions take place in have to be an operating room, sterile, wide, brightly lit, and hallways have to be large enough for 2 hospital beds to pass each other, even though getting an abortion does not require you to be in a hospital bed. So I'm sad for our current patients who I imagine are immediately frightened when they're being rolled into an operating room to have a procedure done which requires very minimal tools. So just kind of ending this, I wrote a poem about my abortion, the best decision I've made to date, and I'll end with the end of this poem. So life can go under the knife. One life is lost, one life is saved. Both are lost, both are saved. Some live in shame and take this to the grave. Some proclaim and regain their aim. Whatever your reasons are, I do not care. This is yours, your body to bear.